Blood dripped onto the hospital floor, each drop marking time like a broken metronask. My vision blurred at the edges, but I could still see my sister's face, pale, terrified, her hand gripping mine so hard I thought my fingers might break. But I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Because if I let go, I'd fall. And if I fell, I wasn't sure I'd get back up. "Ma'am, we need to get you into imaging right now." The nurse's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "That's a serious head injury." I tried to nod, but the movement sent a spike of pain through my skull, so intense I gasped. The waiting room spun, and somewhere behind me I heard my sister Meredith's voice crack as she spoke to someone on the phone. "Mom, she's really hurt." "No, I don't know. She won't tell me what happened. Just get to Mercy General, please." What happened? Such simple words for something so ugly. 6 hours ago, I'd been at the gallery opening I'd spent 3 months organizing. 6 hours ago, I'd been wearing my black dress and my grandmother's pearls, champagne in hand, watching art collectors admire the pieces I'd curated. 6 hours ago, I'd thought Marcus Webb was just an arrogant collector with too much money and not enough taste. 6 hours ago, I didn't know he'd follow me into the back hallway when I went to check on the catering. I didn't know he'd corner me against the wall, his breath reeking of expensive whiskey, his hand clamping over my mouth when I tried to scream. And I definitely didn't know that when I fought back, when I shoved him hard enough that he stumbled, he'd grab the nearest object and swing it at my head. The bronze sculpture I'd spent 2 weeks positioning perfectly in the gallery's east wing became a weapon. The irony wasn't lost on me, even through the haze of pain. "Miss Ashford?" A doctor appeared, her expression grave. "I'm Dr. Chen. We need to do a CT scan immediately. Based on your symptoms, we're looking at a serious cranial fracture, possibly worse." "I need to call my boss," I mumbled. "The gallery." "The gallery can wait," Meredith said firmly, but her voice shook. "Livy, who did this to you?" I closed my eyes. Marcus Webb wasn't just any collector. He sat on the board of directors for the Hartley Foundation, which funded half the galleries in the city. He donated millions to the arts. He had connections to everyone who mattered in my world. Who would believe me? "I fell," I whispered. "Bullshit." Meredith's voice went hard in a way I'd never heard before. "Livy, you have a fracture in your skull. People don't just fall and—" "Meredith." I opened my eyes, met her gaze. "Please." The look she gave me was pure heartbreak, but she stopped talking. They wheeled me toward imaging, and I stared at the fluorescent lights sliding past overhead, each one a bright blur that made my head throb worse. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again and again. Probably my boss, wondering why I'd left the opening early. Probably Marcus's assistant, calling to check in and make sure I understood that this needed to stay quiet. Probably Marcus himself, making sure his message was clear. "Tell anyone, and your career is over." The CT scan machine hummed around me, and I thought about everything I'd worked for. 4 years of graduate school. 2 years as an unpaid intern. Another 3 years clawing my way up to assistant curator. This was supposed to be my breakthrough year. The opening tonight was going to put me on the map. Now I was here, bleeding, lying about what happened, because the truth would destroy everything I'd built. "Miss Ashford, please try to stay still." I tried. I really did. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The diagnosis came an hour later. Depressed skull fracture, grade 2 concussion, and what the doctor delicately called significant trauma. They wanted to admit me overnight for observation. They wanted to call the police. "No police," I said. Dr. Chen frowned. "Miss Ashford, injuries like this don't happen by accident. If someone hurt you—" I fell. The lie tasted like acid. I was looking at my phone on the stairs outside the gallery. I wasn't paying attention. It was stupid, but it was my fault. The doctor's expression said she didn't believe me. The nurse's expression said she'd seen this before. Meredith's expression said she wanted to shake me until I told the truth. But they couldn't force me to talk. So they admitted me to a private room, started an IV, and left me with instructions not to sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. Meredith stayed, curled up in the chair by my bed, her eyes red from crying. "You should go home," I told her. "Nathan's probably worried." "Nathan can survive one night without me." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Livy, please, just tell me who did this. You don't have to tell the police, just tell me." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But Meredith worked in finance, in a world just as small and interconnected as mine. If I told her Marcus Webb's name, if she tried to do something about it, it could hurt her too. "I fell," I repeated. She looked away, her jaw tight. "Fine, but when you're ready to stop lying, I'm here." The room fell quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. I stared at the ceiling, willing myself not to cry, because crying made my head feel like it was splitting open all over again. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. I reached for it with clumsy fingers, squinting at the screen. Marcus Webb. "I hope you're feeling better. These accidents happen. I'm sure you understand how important it is to be careful going forward. The gallery has a bright future. I'd hate to see anything jeopardize that. Rest well." My stomach turned. The threat couldn't have been clearer if he'd written it in blood. I deleted the message and set the phone down, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "Livy?" Meredith's voice was soft. "Are you okay?" No, I wasn't okay. I was 28 years old with a fractured skull and a career hanging by a thread, lying in a hospital bed because I dared to fight back against a man who thought his money made him untouchable. But I couldn't say any of that. "I'm fine," I whispered. The night crawled by in fragments. Nurses came and went. My mother arrived around midnight, her face drawn with worry, and spent 20 minutes interrogating me about what really happened, until I started crying from sheer exhaustion, and she finally stopped. Around 3 in the morning, when even Meredith had dozed off in her chair, I heard voices in the hallway outside my room. "Told you, Mr. Moretti. Visiting hours are over. You can come back at 8. "I'm here now." The voice was low, rough-edged, with an accent I couldn't quite place. "Which room?" "Sir, I can't—" "Which room?" There was a pause, then, 317. "But if security asks, I didn't tell you." Footsteps approached my door. Heavy, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that said the person walking didn't care about hospital rules, or visiting hours or anything except getting where they needed to go. The door opened. The man who walked in was not what I expected. He was tall, at least 6'2", with dark hair pushed back from his face and a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my rent, tailored so perfectly it could have been painted on. But it was his eyes that made me freeze. Dark, intense, fixed on me with the kind of focus that made everything else in the room disappear. "Olivia Ashford?" His voice matched his appearance, rough, commanding, with an undercurrent of something dangerous. I couldn't speak. My mouth had gone completely dry. He stepped closer, and I saw his expression change as he took in the bandages wrapped around my head, the IV in my arm, the bruises already forming on my face. His jaw tightened. "Who the hell fractured your skull?" The question was so blunt, so different from the careful tiptoeing everyone else had been doing, that I almost laughed. Almost. I don't know you," I managed. "Luca Moretti." He moved to the foot of my bed, his hands gripping the rail. "You know my sister, Isabel." Isabel. The name clicked into place. The woman who'd brought 3 paintings to the gallery last month, who'd spent an hour talking to me about her work, who'd invited me to coffee and somehow become a friend in the way that rarely happened in my industry. "Isabel sent you?" The words came out slurred. The pain medication was making everything fuzzy. "She's in Milan for a show. She called me 20 minutes ago, crying, saying something happened to you." His eyes narrowed. "She didn't know what. Just that you were in the hospital and you wouldn't tell anyone the truth. So I'm here, and I'm asking again. Who did this to you?" I shook my head, and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through my skull. "I fell." Like hell you did. He moved around the bed, and suddenly he was standing right next to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. I've seen enough injuries to know the difference between a fall and an assault. Someone hit you. Who? Please, my voice cracked. Just go. I can't or won't. Does it matter? Yeah. His expression was stone. It matters. Meredith stirred in her chair, blinking awake. Her eyes went wide when she saw Luca. Who the... Family friend, Luca said without taking his eyes off me. Go back to sleep. To my shock, Meredith did. Or at least she closed her eyes and pretended to, which was close enough. Luca leaned down, bracing one hand on the bed rail, bringing his face level with mine. Listen to me very carefully, Olivia. Whoever did this thinks they're going to get away with it. They think you're too scared to talk, too worried about your reputation, or your job, or whatever they threatened you with. And maybe you are. But here's what they don't know. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about reputations or consequences or playing by rules. All I care about is that my sister loves you, which means you're under my protection now, whether you like it or not. So you have two choices. Tell me who did this, or I start tearing this city apart until I find out myself. I stared at him. You can't. I absolutely can. He straightened up. Trust me, I've done worse for less reason. There was something in his eyes that made me believe him. Something that said this man had seen violence, had lived in it, had maybe even thrived in it. Why do you care? I whispered. Because someone hurt you. Someone hurt you badly enough to put you in a hospital bed, and they thought they could walk away clean. His expression went cold. Nobody walks away clean from something like that. Not in my city. His city. The way he said it made it sound like a fact, not an opinion. I thought about Marcus Webb's text message, his threat, his absolute certainty that I'd keep quiet because I had too much to lose. And then I thought about lying in this hospital bed, holding on to my silence like it was going to protect me, when all it was really doing was protecting him. Marcus Webb, I heard myself say. The name hung in the air between us. Luca went very, very still. Say that again. Marcus Webb, he's on the board of the Hartley Foundation. He was at the gallery opening tonight, last night, whatever. My words were tumbling out now, faster and faster. He cornered me in the back hallway. I tried to push him away and he grabbed a sculpture and he... My voice broke. I couldn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. Luca's expression transformed into something terrifying. Marcus Webb, he repeated slowly, like he was memorizing the name. The art collector? Yes. The one who donates to museums and sits on foundation boards? Yes. The one who thinks his money makes him bulletproof? I nodded, barely. Luca pulled out his phone and pressed a single button. Someone answered on the first ring. Tommy, I need everything you can find on Marcus Webb. Home address, office address, where he eats breakfast, where he gets his suits dry cleaned, who he's sleeping with, who he owes money to, everything. You have 1 hour. He ended the call without waiting for a response. What are you going to do? I asked, even though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. He looked at me, and for just a moment his expression softened. What I should have done the second I walked into this room. I'm going to make sure Marcus Webb understands that some people can't be touched. And you, Olivia Ashford, are one of them now. I don't need... Yes, you do. He said it gently, but with absolute certainty. You need someone in your corner who isn't afraid of men like Marcus Webb. Someone who can make him understand that actions have consequences. He paused. Let me be that person. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him I could handle this myself. That I didn't need some stranger sweeping in to fight my battles. But the truth was, I couldn't handle it myself. Marcus Webb had made sure of that when he'd put his hands on me, when he'd threatened my career. when he'd fractured my skull and walked away knowing I'd be too scared to do anything about it. "Okay," I whispered. Luca nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow." He was halfway to the door when I called out, "Luca!" He turned back. "Thank you." His expression was unreadable. "Don't thank me yet." Then he was gone, and I was alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the absolute certainty that I'd just set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. I must have drifted off at some point because when I opened my eyes again, morning light was streaming through the window and Meredith was shaking my shoulder gently. "Livy, wake up. There's someone here to see you." I blinked groggily. "Who?" "Police." My heart jumped into my throat. "I didn't call—" "We know you didn't." The voice came from the doorway, where a woman in a detective's badge stood with a notepad in hand. "I'm Detective Reina Santos. Can I come in?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to leave, that there was nothing to investigate, that I'd fallen, and that was the end of it. But Meredith was looking at me with such hope in her eyes that I couldn't bring myself to lie again. "Okay," I said quietly. Detective Santos pulled up a chair. She was maybe 40, with kind eyes and the air of someone who'd heard every excuse in the book. "Miss Ashford, I'm going to be straight with you. We got an anonymous tip this morning about an assault that occurred at the Riverside Gallery last night. The tip included your name, the location, and enough details that we can't ignore it. Anonymous tip. Luca. It had to be. I started. Before you tell me you fell, I want you to know something." Santos leaned forward. "Marcus Webb has had 3 complaints filed against him in the past 5 years. All 3 women worked in the art world. All 3 said they were too afraid to press charges because he'd ruined their careers. All 3 cases went nowhere because we had no physical evidence, and no witnesses willing to testify. My blood ran cold. 3? That we know about." Santos's expression was grim. "Maybe more who never came forward at all, but here's the thing. If you're willing to talk, if you're willing to make a statement, we finally have a chance to stop him. The gallery has security cameras. If we can get footage from last night, and if you're willing to testify about what happened—" "He'll destroy me," I whispered. "He'll try." Santos didn't sugarcoat it. "Men like Marcus Webb don't go down easy. But I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've learned something. The only way predators like him keep getting away with it is because everyone's too scared to stop them. Someone has to be first." I looked at Meredith. She was crying silently, her hand covering her mouth. "If I do this," I said slowly, "if I make a statement and testify, what happens to me? We build a case, we arrest him, and yeah, there'll be blowback. People will take sides, and some of them won't take yours. But you'll be alive, and you'll be free, and he'll be in a cell where he belongs." Santos paused, and those other 3 women, the ones who were too scared to come forward, maybe they'll finally feel safe enough to add their voices to yours. The idea of that, of standing up not just for myself, but for women I'd never even met, made something shift in my chest. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll make a statement." Santos's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I promise you we're going to do everything we can to protect you through this process." She pulled out her notepad, and for the next hour, I told her everything. Every detail of last night, every text message, every moment of terror and pain. Meredith held my hand the entire time, and when I finally finished, I felt simultaneously lighter and more terrified than I'd ever been in my life. Santos stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The anonymous tip mentioned that you might have outside support, someone looking out for you. Is that true?" I thought about Luca Moretti's dark eyes and his promise. "Maybe." "Okay." Santos looked like she wanted to say more, but thought better of it. "Just be careful, Miss Ashford. Sometimes the people who want to help us aren't helping in ways that keep everyone safe." After she left, Meredith finally spoke. "Who was that man last night? The one who came to your room? Luca Moretti. He's Isabel's brother. Isabel, who you met at the gallery? Yeah. Meredith was quiet for a long moment. Livy, I need to tell you something. When Nathan and I were dating, before we got married, he worked for a law firm that dealt with organized crime cases. And one of the names that came up a lot was Moretti. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying that Luca Moretti isn't just some concerned family friend. He's... She stopped, choosing her words carefully. He's dangerous, Livy. The kind of dangerous that makes prosecutors nervous and defense attorneys rich. If he's involved in this now, things are going to get complicated fast. He just wanted to help. Maybe. Meredith squeezed my hand. Or maybe he saw an opportunity. These men, they don't do anything without a reason. I wanted to argue, but I was too exhausted. And besides, some part of me wondered if she was right. What had I gotten myself into? They released me from the hospital that afternoon with a stack of prescriptions, a list of warning signs to watch for, and instructions to follow up with a neurologist in 2 weeks. My mother drove me home while Meredith went to my apartment to make sure everything was ready. We didn't talk much during the drive. What was there to say? My mother had cried enough in the hospital. Now she just looked tired and worried and angry. Angry at Marcus Webb, angry at the world, maybe even a little angry at me for putting myself in this situation. When we pulled up to my building, there was a black SUV parked out front. Who's that? My mother asked. The driver's side door opened and Luca stepped out. He looked different in daylight, no less dangerous but somehow more real. He wore dark jeans and a fitted Henley, and when he saw me, his expression tightened. Friend of yours? My mother asked skeptically. It's complicated. I got out of the car slowly, every movement making my head throb. Luca was beside me in seconds, his hand hovering near my elbow like he wanted to help, but wasn't sure if he should touch me. You should still be in the hospital, he said. They cleared me to go home. I gestured to my mother, who was getting out of the car with a suspicious expression. Mom, this is Luca Moretti. Luca, this is my mother, Patricia Ashford. Mrs. Ashford, Luca nodded politely. My mother looked him up and down, then turned to me. I'll help you upstairs. Actually, Luca said, I need to speak with Olivia, privately. Absolutely not. She just got out of the hospital. Mom, I put a hand on her arm. It's okay, really. I'll come up in a minute. She didn't look happy about it, but she grabbed my overnight bag from the car and headed inside, throwing one last warning glare at Luca over her shoulder. When she was gone, Luca turned to me. Marcus Webb was arrested 2 hours ago. I stared at him. What? The gallery's security footage from last night. The detective got a warrant, pulled the recordings, and found everything. You fighting him off, him hitting you, all of it. His expression was grim satisfaction. He's being charged with felony assault. They're holding him without bail until the arraignment. I couldn't breathe. That fast? I know people. He said it simply, like it was obvious. People who can make things happen when they need to. The detective warned me about you, I said quietly. She said you're dangerous. I am. He didn't deny it. But not to you. How do I know that? Luca stepped closer, and I caught that same scent from last night. Expensive cologne, and something underneath it that was just him. Because if I wanted to hurt you, Olivia, I wouldn't have spent the last 12 hours making sure Marcus Webb pays for what he did. I'd have just walked away. Then why didn't you? I told you, you're important to my sister, which makes you important to me. He paused, studying my face. And because when I walked into that hospital room and saw what he'd done to you, I wanted to put a bullet in his skull. The fact that I'm letting the cops handle it instead should tell you something about my self-control. I should have been terrified. This man was basically admitting he'd considered murder as a solution to my problem. Instead, I felt oddly safe. What happens now? I asked. Now you heal. You testify when the time comes. And you let me handle anything Marcus Webb's lawyers try to throw at you. His eyes locked with mine. I'm not going anywhere, Olivia. Not until this is done. And after that? He smiled slightly, and it transformed his entire face. We'll figure it out. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Marcus Webb's arrest made headlines. Apparently, when a wealthy philanthropist with a spotless public image gets charged with felony assault, people notice. The art world was in chaos. Some people believed the charges, others insisted it was a setup, and everyone had an opinion about whether I was brave or stupid for coming forward. The gallery put me on paid leave while the situation resolves. My boss sent a carefully worded email that basically said, "We support you, but also this is really inconvenient for us, so please make it go away fast." The other 3 women Detective Santos had mentioned, they all came forward. Within a week of Marcus's arrest, we had 4 separate assault charges spanning 5 years. The DA was building a case that could put him away for decades, and through all of it, Luca was there. Not obviously, not in a way that felt suffocating, but I'd wake up to find coffee from my favorite shop on my doorstep with a note that just said L. I'd get a text checking in. When reporters started camping outside my building, they mysteriously disappeared after one night. When I asked Luca about that, he just said, "They got bored." I didn't believe him, but I also didn't push. Isabel came back from Milan and showed up at my apartment with wine and takeout and apologies for being out of the country when everything happened. We stayed up until 2 a.m. talking, and at some point she said, "My brother likes you." I nearly choked on my wine. "What?" "Luca, he likes you," she grinned. "I can tell. He's been insufferable lately, checking his phone constantly, making sure you have everything you need. It's adorable." We're not, I floundered. "Isabel, I barely know him." "So get to know him," she shrugged. "He's a good man, Livy. Complicated, definitely. Not without his issues, but good. And he'd do anything for the people he cares about. I'm not one of those people. Yet." 2 days later, Luca showed up at my door with groceries. "You've been eating nothing but takeout," he said by way of explanation. "Isabel told me." "Traitor," I muttered, but I let him in. He moved around my kitchen like he'd been doing it for years, unpacking bags and putting things away with surprising efficiency. I watched from the doorway, my head still wrapped in bandages, feeling simultaneously useless and grateful. "You don't have to do this," I said. "I know." He pulled out pasta, fresh vegetables, chicken breast. "I want to." "Why?" He stopped, turned to look at me. "You keep asking me that." "Because I don't understand. You don't owe me anything. We barely know each other." Luca set down the bag he was holding and crossed the kitchen to where I stood. He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "You want the truth?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "The truth is, when I walked into that hospital room and saw you, saw what he'd done to you, something in me broke." His jaw tightened. "I've seen a lot of ugly things in my life, Olivia. I've done ugly things, but watching you try to hold yourself together, watching you protect the man who hurt you because you were too scared of what speaking up would cost, that did something to me. Luca, I'm not done." His voice was rough. "You're brave. Maybe the bravest person I've met. And you didn't deserve what happened to you. Nobody does. So yeah, I'm going to make sure you're okay. I'm going to make sure you're safe. And I'm going to make sure Marcus Webb never hurts anyone again. That's why I'm here." I couldn't look away from him, couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think of a single thing to say that would match the intensity of what he'd just told me. So instead, I said, "You should probably finish putting the groceries away before the ice cream melts." His expression softened. "Yeah. Probably." He went back to unpacking, and I watched him, wondering when exactly this man had become so important to me. The arraignment was scheduled for 3 weeks after the arrest. Luca drove me to the courthouse, despite my protests that I could take a cab. "Not happening," he'd said firmly. "You're not going through this alone." The courthouse steps were packed with reporters. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Karen Chen, who Luca had somehow connected me with, met us at the entrance with a grim expression. "They're offering a plea deal," she said without preamble. 2 years, with possibility of parole after 1. My stomach dropped. 2 years? That's it? His lawyers are good, and he's got no prior record, at least not officially. Karen's expression was apologetic. "The DA thinks it's the best we can get without risking a trial." "Absolutely not," Luca's voice was ice. "He fractured her skull. He's assaulted at least 3 other women. 2 years is nothing." "I know that, Mr. Moretti, but—" "Tell the DA we're going to trial." "Luca," I said quietly, "maybe we should—" "No." He turned to me, his expression fierce. "You didn't go through all of this, didn't stand up when you were terrified, didn't make yourself a target just to let him walk out of prison in a year. We're going to trial, and we're going to make sure every single thing he's done comes out in open court." Karen looked between us, then nodded. "I'll let them know." Inside the courtroom, I sat with the other 3 women who'd come forward. We didn't know each other, not really, but there was a strange solidarity between us. We'd all been victimized by the same man. We'd all been too scared to speak up until someone else went first. When Marcus Webb was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, I felt Luca tense beside me. I glanced over and saw his hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight enough that I thought he might crack a tooth. "Don't," I whispered. "He's right there." Luca's voice was barely audible. "I could, but you won't." I put my hand over his fist, feeling the tension there. "Because I need you here with me, not in a cell next to him." Slowly, his hand relaxed under mine. The judge denied bail. Marcus Webb would remain in custody until trial. His lawyers protested. His family, his wife, his 2 grown children, looked shocked and devastated. But the evidence was too strong, the charges too serious. As they let him out, Marcus's eyes found mine across the courtroom. The look he gave me was pure hatred. I lifted my chin and stared back, refusing to look away first. Luca's hand found mine, his fingers threading through my own. Marcus was the one who looked away. The trial was set for 2 months later. In the meantime, my life slowly started to rebuild itself. The gallery offered me my job back with a promotion and a raise, their way of apologizing for not supporting me better, I supposed. I accepted, but told them I needed another month before I came back. My head healed. The bandages came off. The scars would fade, the doctor said, though I'd always have a slight indentation where the fracture had been. I didn't mind. It was a reminder that I'd survived. Luca and I fell into a routine that felt dangerous in how comfortable it was. He'd stop by most evenings, sometimes with food, sometimes just to talk. We'd sit on my couch and watch movies or debate art or argue about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He said yes. I said absolutely not. Isabel grinned every time she saw us together and made increasingly less subtle comments about how cute we were. "We're not together," I told her for the 100th time. "Sure you're not," she'd smirk. "That's why he rearranged his entire schedule to make sure he could drive you to physical therapy appointments." I didn't have a good response to that. The truth was, I didn't know what Luca and I were. Friends, maybe. But friends didn't look at each other the way we did. Friends didn't make my heart race when they walked into a room. Friends didn't make me wonder what it would feel like to close the distance between us, and finally kiss them. One night, about a week before the trial, Luca showed up at my door at 11 p.m., looking like he'd been in a fight. "What happened?" I pulled him inside, my hands already reaching for his face to check for injuries. "Nothing. I'm fine." But his knuckles were bruised, and there was blood on his shirt. "That's not your blood, is it?" "No. Luca." Some of Marcus Webb's friends decided to send a message. His expression was dark. "They found out where I live. Thought they'd rough me up a little. Make it clear I should back off." Horror washed through me. "Oh my God. Are you okay? Should we call the police?" "Already handled." He caught my hands, stopping my frantic examination. "Olivia, I'm fine. They're not. What does that mean? It means they won't be bothering either of us again. I stared at him, at the blood on his shirt and the cold certainty in his eyes, and I finally understood what Meredith had been trying to tell me. Luca Moretti wasn't just dangerous in theory. He was dangerous in practice. He'd hurt people tonight, maybe badly, and he didn't seem to feel even a little bit guilty about it. I should have been scared. Instead, I stepped closer to him. "You can't keep doing this," I said quietly. "You can't keep putting yourself in danger for me." "Yes, I can. Luca, listen to me." He lifted one hand to my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone just below where the scar was still healing. In my world, there are very few people I'd go to war for. My sister, my family, and you. Whether you like it or not, you're on that list now. So if someone tries to hurt you, or threaten you, or scare you into silence, I'm going to handle it. That's not negotiable. Why? The question came out barely above a whisper. Why am I on that list? His eyes searched mine for a long moment. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Because I'm in love with you. The world stopped. What? I'm in love with you, he repeated louder this time. I think I have been since that night in the hospital, when you were so scared and hurt, but you still told me the truth. When you trusted me enough to let me help you. I've been trying to fight it, trying to tell myself it's too soon, that you've been through too much, that you need time to heal. But tonight, when those men came after me and all I could think about was getting back to you, making sure you were safe. He stopped, his jaw working. I can't fight it anymore. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My entire world had just tilted on its axis. You barely know me, I managed. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and stubborn as hell. I know you laugh at my terrible jokes and you cry during cooking shows. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and you're afraid of spiders, but you won't kill them because you think it's mean. His hand was still on my face, warm and steady. I know that when I'm with you, I want to be a better man than I am. And I know that if you ask me to walk away right now, it'll probably kill me. But I'll do it, because your happiness matters more to me than anything else. Luca. My voice broke on his name. You don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I know it's too much, too fast. I just needed you to know. Before the trial, before everything gets complicated again, I needed you to know how I feel. I looked up at him, at this dangerous, complicated, impossibly good man who'd crashed into my life at the worst possible moment and somehow become essential. And I made a choice. I kissed him. It wasn't gentle, or careful, or tentative. It was fierce, and desperate, and full of every emotion I'd been holding back for weeks. His arms came around me immediately, pulling me closer, and I kissed him like I was drowning, and he was air. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I love you, too, I whispered against his mouth. I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it. You're not scared anymore? Terrified, I laughed shakily. But I'm doing it anyway. He kissed me again, softer this time, and I felt something inside me finally settle, like I'd been waiting my whole life to feel this safe, this cherished, this seen. Stay tonight, I said when we came up for air. Olivia, just asleep. I don't want to be alone. His expression softened. Okay. We ended up on my couch, me curled into his side, his arms around me like a shield against the world. I fell asleep listening to the steady beat of his heart, feeling safer than I'd felt in months. The trial started on a Monday in late October. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, art world insiders, supporters on both sides. Marcus Webb's family sat in the front row, looking stern and disbelieving. My family sat on the other side, my mother gripping my father's hand so hard her knuckles were white. Luca wasn't allowed in the courtroom during my testimony. He was listed as a witness, but he walked me to the door that morning and held my face in his hands. You're going to be amazing, he said softly. Just tell the truth. That's all you have to do. I'm so scared. I know. But you're also the strongest person I know." He kissed my forehead. "I'll be right outside waiting. The second you're done, I'll be here." I nodded, took a deep breath, and walked into the courtroom. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified on Tuesday. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Sitting on that stand, looking at Marcus Webb, and recounting every horrible detail of what he'd done. His lawyers tried to tear me apart, suggesting I'd wanted the attention, that I'd been flirting with him, that I was making it up for money or fame. Karen objected to most of it. The judge sustained most of the objections, but some of the questions got through, and each one felt like a small cut. The other 3 women testified on Wednesday. Their stories were eerily similar to mine: the isolation, the attack, the threats afterward. By the time the last one finished, even the jury looked sick. On Thursday, they showed the security footage. The courtroom went silent as we watched grainy black and white video of Marcus Webb cornering me in that hallway. Watched me try to push him away. Watched him grab the sculpture and swing it at my head. Watched me fall. Someone in the gallery gasped. I think it might have been my mother. I couldn't watch. I stared at my hands and tried not to cry. Luca testified that afternoon. He was called because he'd been the one to initially contact the police about the assault. Marcus's lawyers tried to paint him as a vigilante, as someone with ulterior motives, as a criminal using my case to further his own agenda. Luca sat there calmly through all of it, and then said very simply, "I reported a crime. That's what any decent person would do." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted. Marcus Webb's wife sobbed. His lawyers immediately called for an appeal. But none of it mattered, because the judge's gavel came down, and it was over. Marcus Webb would spend the next 15 years in prison. I walked out of the courthouse into a sea of cameras and questions, but I barely heard any of it. Because Luca was there, pushing through the crowd to get to me. And the moment he reached me, he pulled me into his arms. "You did it," he said into my hair. "It's over. You're safe." I was crying, but for the first time in months, they were tears of relief. 3 months later, the Riverside Gallery held a new exhibition. It was called Voices and featured work from local artists who'd survived assault and abuse. I'd curated it, my first major project since coming back to work, and it had been therapeutic in ways I couldn't have imagined. The opening night was packed. Press, collectors, donors, everyone who was anyone in the city's art scene. And Luca, who'd shown up in a suit that made me forget how to think clearly. "You clean up nice," I told him as he handed me a glass of champagne. "You look stunning," he countered, his eyes traveling over the blue dress I'd chosen. "Though I'm biased. Extremely biased." He grinned and pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple. We'd been together officially for 2 months now, and it still felt a little surreal. Luca Moretti, the man who'd terrified me the first time we met, was now the person I came home to every night. The person who made me coffee in the mornings, and argued with me about museum exhibitions, and held me when the nightmares came. The person I loved more than I'd ever thought possible. "Olivia!" I turned to see Isabel rushing over, her face flushed with excitement. "This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. You've outdone yourself." "Thanks," I hugged her. "None of this would have happened without you, you know? If you hadn't called Luca that night." "Don't." She pulled back, her expression serious. "You did this. You're the one who had the courage to speak up. I just made a phone call. A phone call that changed everything." She glanced between me and Luca, then smiled. "Yeah, I guess it did." The night wound down eventually. People filtered out, leaving behind empty glasses and business cards and promises to stay in touch. Luca helped me clean up because that's what he did. Showed up and helped, no questions asked. "You know," I said as we packed up the last of the catering supplies, 6 months ago, my entire world fell apart. I remember. And now it's somehow better than it was before. I looked around the gallery, at the beautiful space I'd created, at the evidence that trauma could be transformed into something meaningful. How is that possible? Luca set down the box he was holding and crossed to where I stood. He took my hands in his expression soft. "Because you're not the same person you were 6 months ago," he said. "You're stronger, braver. You know exactly what you're capable of now. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "I love you." "I love you too." He kissed me softly, then pulled back with a smile. "Come on, let's get out of here." We walked out of the gallery hand in hand into the cool November night. My phone buzzed in my purse, probably emails about the exhibition, reviews that would come in over the next few days, but I ignored it, because for the first time in as long as I could remember, I wasn't worried about what came next. I wasn't scared of my future or haunted by my past. I was just here, now, with the man I loved and the life I'd fought so hard to rebuild. And that was more than enough. 6 months later. The reservation was at 8, and Luca was being weirdly secretive about where we were going. "Just trust me," he said for the 5th time as we drove through the city. "I do trust you. I'd just also like to know where we're having dinner." "You'll see in 5 minutes." I settled back in my seat, watching the city lights blur past. We'd been together almost a year now, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I was thriving at the gallery. My Voices exhibition had won an award and led to a promotion. Luca had somehow managed to go semi-legitimate with his business dealings, though I suspected semi was doing a lot of work in that sentence. We'd moved in together 3 months ago. Isabel had helped me pack, making increasingly ridiculous comments about how domestic her brother had become. I couldn't disagree. Luca pulled up in front of a building I recognized, the old Meridian Theater, which had been closed for renovations for the past year. "We're eating in a construction site?" I asked skeptically. "Funny." He got out and came around to open my door. "Come on." He led me through a side entrance, up a flight of stairs and out onto the rooftop. I stopped dead. The rooftop had been transformed. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting everything in a warm glow. There was a table set for 2 in the center, complete with candles and roses. In the background, I could hear soft music playing. "Luca," I breathed. "When did you—" "I have my ways." He pulled out my chair. "Sit. Dinner's about to arrive." It was perfect. The food was incredible. The view of the city was stunning, and Luca was being charming and funny and everything I loved about him. But about halfway through the meal, I noticed he seemed nervous. His hands kept fidgeting with his napkin, and he wasn't quite meeting my eyes. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Yes, everything's fine." He set down his fork. "Actually, I need to tell you something." My heart jumped. That sounds ominous. It's not. I hope it's not. He took a deep breath. "Olivia, this past year has been— I don't even have words for what it's been. You came into my life when I wasn't looking for anyone, when I'd pretty much convinced myself that I was fine alone. And then suddenly, you were there, and everything changed. Luca, let me finish." He stood up, came around the table, and— oh God, he was getting down on one knee. "I know it's fast," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I know we've only been together for a year, and there are probably 100 reasons why we should wait. But here's the thing. I don't want to wait. I don't want to spend another day not knowing that you're going to be in my life forever. So, Olivia Ashford?" He opened the box and I saw the ring inside, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the rooftop. "Will you marry me?" I was crying. When had I started crying? "Yes," I managed. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, then stood and pulled me into his arms, kissing me like we weren't on a rooftop in the middle of the city where anyone could see. I kissed him back just as fiercely, thinking about the scared woman in a hospital bed who'd met this man at the worst moment of her life, thinking about how that worst moment had somehow led to this, to love, to healing, to a future I couldn't wait to build. When we finally broke apart, Luca rested his forehead against mine. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this," he said softly. "I won't." I touched his face, this dangerous, complicated, impossibly loving man who'd saved me in every way that mattered. "I promise, I won't." Below us, the city sparkled with 1,000 lights. Above us, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. And between us, there was nothing but love and certainty, and the absolute knowledge that whatever came next, we'd face it together. "Take me home," I whispered. Luca smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face, and kissed me one more time. "Anything for you." And he meant it.